It's a How to Shoot Hybrid podcast discussing topics around photography, videography and running a business. My name's Jules and I'm here with my co-host Kieran. Thanks
Evening
for joining us,
or
mate.
afternoon or morning, wherever you are in the world.
On this episode, we're going to be discussing the hardest things to master about hybrid photo and video shooting as a solo wedding shooter. So stick around if that's something you're interested in. Before we do that, just a quick ask from you, and that is that if you are listening to the podcast, if you're getting some value from it and you enjoy listening, will you just follow it or subscribe wherever you're listening? If you listen to it on a podcast app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, there should be a follow button somewhere. Or if you're on YouTube, because you will be able to watch this on YouTube, there's a YouTube channel and you'll be able to subscribe to that. Obviously, if you do that, then you get to know when we release some more content. And we've also got an Instagram profile, which is How to Shoot Hybrid, all one word. We'll be doing some little educational pieces on there for you to learn little tips and tricks from. So if that's of interest to you, go and check it out. So, mate, let's talk about solo hybrid shooting at weddings.
Let's go. Let's talk about it.
This is my take on it. Like people, I think a lot of people, when you say that you can shoot a wedding doing photo and video as a solo person, I think that a lot of people think you're crazy.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think we are crazy. I think we are crazy. I think I understand the exact reasons why people would think that. Even before I started shooting hybrid, it took me quite a few months to realise that it wasn't rocket science, and it's possible without losing the quality of your work as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is a challenge there of there will always be a compromise if you are shooting both photo and video. I think that,
what would that compromise be in your head then?
Well, I think that we're not talking here about the best photography, wedding photography in the world, or the best wedding videography in the world. So there are some wedding photographers who create some really amazing fine art type work. And there are some amazing wedding videographers who do the most complex, highly edited pieces where have you seen the Americans Sculpting with Time?
No, I don't think I have actually. Well,
check that out if you ever get time. And if you listen to the podcast, go and have a look at them. Their work is, and I could name quite a few other wedding videographers from different parts of the world who do, really intricate stuff. I mean, Fire and Ice in this country, they do quite complex edits. Mm-hmm. Now, what I would say is that you're never going to be able to do that level of if you are shooting as a solo shooter hybrid.
No, you're not.
But you're not ever going to be able to shoot it as a solo shooter anyway. Those sorts of edits, wedding video edits, they require teams of people, and they require
never sell that
planning.
Sort of video. Yeah, never sell that sort of video or photography as a solo shooter. So it's, I suppose, part of this podcast really is how difficult is it to shoot a podcast? How difficult is it to shoot a podcast? How difficult is it to shoot hybrid?
It's pretty difficult.
It's pretty difficult. Yeah. How difficult is it to shoot hybrid, but also how do you sell hybrid? Because really it's all about what product you're going to provide, really, isn't it? You need to be clear on that before you actually start offering. You don't want to be offering, as you said, a full Hollywood movie to someone when, in actual fact, that's not going to be possible when you're shooting photography at the same time.
Yeah. So that's the question, isn't it? Well, not the question necessarily, but that's the approach. It's when you are talking about hybrid, I think people, other photographers, other videographers that maybe think it's a really bad idea because you're going to water down the product. Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is you're not actually selling hybrid to somebody who's going to hire a Sculpting with Time or a Fire and Ice production. You're not going to have somebody who's wanting a particular level of production, either from the video or they're wanting this really highly kind of posed, highly kind of detail in terms of like coverage is immaculate. Now, me and you both shoot in a fairly documentary style, I would say. That's right. So whether we're shooting photo or video, we're probably capturing the day pretty much as it's happening. We're not setting a lot of stuff up. We're not asking the couple to do a lot of things. So therefore, you know, for us, I won't speak for you, but for me, it's a case of if I'm taking photos, I'm taking photos, and if I'm shooting video, it's the same almost process. There might be a slight difference in the way that I compose things and the way that, you know, like you have to wait a bit longer with a video shot. You can't just swing the camera around taking photos of different things. But, you know, it's the same approach. Whereas, you know, when people say, well, I don't know how you can do both, like you've said, it's the product you're going to deliver, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's the process of how you actually shoot the day as well. So if you're going to overcomplicate it and you're thinking about bringing drones onto the scene, gimbals, all that sort of stuff, yeah, it is going to start getting more complicated there. But, I mean, everyone shoots differently. Me, when I shoot hybrid, everything's pretty much handheld. On the occasion, for like key moments, I might have a tripod set up in the background somewhere to capture key moments. Quite similar to your style of visuals, or your approach, should I say. But yeah.
So to kind of summarize the overall approach, it's about tailoring the approach of you're not capturing one or the other. It's not about compromise in terms of you're going to do a shit job on one or shit job on both because you're not focusing on just one. It's that you're actually providing almost a different service. You're pitching it to a couple as you're going to get some really nice photos of those moments that you're going to want to see in still images. And you're also going to get this nice kind of highlight film. And they're both going to be nice products, but you weren't going to hire this massive production team anyway. So you would have either just got one or the other, but you wouldn't necessarily have got both if you wouldn't have been looking around for this big production anyway. So that's kind of like the diff. You know, that's why I think that it actually works and it makes sense. Absolutely. And we won't kind of go into why it makes sense as a business because that's a different topic altogether. But as for the couple, the sorts of couples who are going to book you to do hybrid, like I was speaking to I had an inquiry and I was speaking to them this week, and I've found this a lot more recently, that more and more couples want both, but they don't want to hire two companies and they don't want lots of people. So that's isn't it, really?
It's the ease of everything. Funnily enough, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was about packages and prices and how to get your clients booked. So it's all about offering your client the easy options. So if you've got these easy options, you've got more chance of them booking you. For example, hybrid, rather than having to search, as you said, for 2-3 suppliers. You're all in one location. It's one payout, one contract to sign, one form to fill out. That ends up just being an easier process for them, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is probably quite appealing to a lot of people.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk through then how it's the difficulties that we would have as a hybrid shooter, because I imagine that anybody's listening who is either trying to become, incorporate both photo and video as a solo shooter, or has like kind of never really done it or thought about it, but they're kind of interested in, I can't get my head around that because how would you do this and how would you do that as a solo shooter? So let's pick on the bits that you would typically struggle with as a solo shooter. Yeah. So if we take, an establishing shot or something like that, they tend to be done at a slower part of the day. So from my perspective, there's no issue whatsoever with doing details or establishing shots as a dual shooter, because those bits you've normally not got any time pressures. Would you agree that's really easy to do?
Yeah, that's not a problem. I mean, like the detail shots, like the bridal detail shots and whatnot, it doesn't take that long to take them shots anyway, does it? So as long as you get them specific shots before she's wearing the details, then it's all done, isn't it? It's easy peasy. It's just that you're going to take the photograph, flip it to film, catch a couple of things. I mean, we won't go too deep into the detail shots, but a lot of hybrid shooters actually just use their detailed photographs.
Use a photo, yeah.
To drop into the video. So you could even do it that way. So the pressure's off even more then.
Yeah, absolutely. So then you kind of, let's say you get into prep. If you're doing all day coverage and you're doing prep, how would you normally, with the photo video, you're wanting to get some video clips, you're wanting to get the photos, how would you approach the getting ready? Let's say the bride, if there's a bride, let's say how do you normally kind of go about that? And bear in mind at this point, we're normally there, aren't we, in prep for like an hour or two?
Yeah. So it's pretty simple from my point of view. When I edit videos, I try and keep to the same or similar format or template. So for bridal prep, there might be only 2 or 3 shots in bridal prep. So as long as I've got them shots, maybe getting the lips put on, their eye on, and doing a last button up of the dress or whatnot, if I've got them shots on the video, I know that's all I really need. So I think part of that is just down to experience as well, and knowing what you need for your video. And the rest of it is just capturing the photographs. And pretty much, to be fair, the same with the photographs is as long as I've got a handful of prep shots, that's all that's really needed. That'll tell that part of the day's story for me. So I won't be sat around for hours on end trying to capture. I mean, like I did when I first started out, I probably got 50 to 80 video clips of bridal prep when in reality I used 3 of them. So really, I think it's just down to experience and knowing once you've edited a couple of videos, you know the kind of things you're looking out for. And then once you've got them, you're pretty much safe to flip back to photography and crack on that way, aren't you? And I'm not sure if you work the same way, if you've got a template in your head that you use.
And that's a really good point that you've made, because it's about thinking, you know, how many of these shots do I actually need? How much of this footage do I actually need? And if your prep, you know, let's say your ceremony's at 1 and you get to bridal prep or groom prep at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and you know you've got like an hour to 2 hours to get the prep. I mean, you might not stay in the room for all that time because you might kind of flit in and out and do other stuff, but essentially, if you can, alongside doing your photos, whatever photos you'd normally get as a photographer, if you can't get 3-4 video clips in an hour, do you know what I mean? Of different, and like, it's not necessarily just of the same things, is it, as the photos? Because actually with video, you might go, well, I want a photo that actually captures an expression. Whereas with video, it might be more subtle. It might be more close-up shots of lips, or it might be more close-up shots of hands. Whereas, you know, this is actually going off topic now. I'm going into more how you shoot video.
Yeah. We'll get to that one. We'll get to that podcast.
We'll get to that on another episode. But essentially, because you're doing that, you're not, you know, you've got. Right. This is what I would say. If I ever just do photo, which I don't do that many, just photo, I actually don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
That's like, I feel like I've got too much time to take the photos that are needed. Yeah. I'm almost itching to make some video content too, because I'm thinking normally I would be switching between them, and I feel like I'd be much more productive rather than taking the time. Like there's only so many photos you can take of certain things. Yeah. So
I agree on that.
So let's kind of move forward then, because then we're going to get to, like, I would say the first hardest bit of the day for me is something like a first look, whether that's you know, the couple seeing each other, or whether that's with bridesmaids or parents.
Yeah.
Because if you're on your own, and just a caveat, it's not a bad idea to have a second shooter if you're doing a hybrid coverage, but it's just that you might not, you know. So ideally, you have a second shoot, and that makes your life a lot easier. Obviously, we're just covering the solo because it is like one of those things of like, how the hell can you do that? So let's talk through you've got a situation where you've got that, how would you approach that? Because I've kind of got a few things that I would do.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
have you got anything that you do in that situation?
Different situations, I think. So a lot of the time, if say we're doing the first look with the dad when she's in dress, a lot of the time set up a static camera just behind, and I'll press record. That can film that moment. I'll be photographing, so you've captured both moments there. Yeah, it's a static shot, but a lot of my shots are static, so it kind of merges anyway. It's not too bad. The other option is when you're shooting hybrid, I think it's really important to be clear with your couples. So ask them what you prefer. If you can't get one shot, there was a moment where I was in a very, very tight corridor. I couldn't set up two cameras. It was me with my back against the wall. It just wouldn't. Nothing else would have worked. So I either had the option of shooting it photography or videography. So I said to the bride, what would you prefer? So I was quite open with her. She decided to go photography. However, the other option as well is, which you could explain to your couple, is if you shoot the video, you can get still clips off that. They're not going to be the best high quality photos. Yeah, it's still a moment captured that you can put into their gallery, which is, yeah, it's still a moment. So there's a couple of options for you. I think the main thing is just to be clear with your couples what you're intending to do and give them the choice as well.
Absolutely. So that what you've just said, that they're options that I've kind of used and would use a lot of the time. There are kind of other things you could do. People think it's a little bit crazy, but it's actually quite easy to rig two cameras together. Mm-hmm. I've done that before.
You did that on one that I was with, didn't you? I remember seeing that.
Yeah. So it's these days there are ways you can do that. It might be a bit heavy. You might look like a bit of a tit, but to be perfectly honest, if videographers are running around with massive rigs at weddings with like two-handed gimbals and stuff like that, believe me, having two cameras kind of rigged together, handheld, is not going to look that ridiculous.
No, it's not.
And it's actually not that hard to operate, if I'm being honest.
No.
Have I completely nailed that? No, I haven't.
The issue I find with that, because I've tried that before, is I fucked it up because I ended up shooting the majority of it in portrait.
Right.
So it didn't work for the video.
But now we're reels, mate. No one cares. It's probably what they want.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, that is an option. That is a good option. I do know some quite high-end videographers that use GoPros. Just for little moments like that, you could easily attach a GoPro to your camera and get them moments captured.
Yeah, so one of the things I bought a few months ago was the new DJI Pocket 3.
Yeah.
And it's it's a little gimbal camera. It's tiny, and you can attach that to the hot shoe on top of your camera, because it's actually got an actual physical gimbal on it.
Yeah.
It gives a really steady shot. So instead of like having to handhold and move around with the photo camera, and then have this other camera fixed to it that's going to get all of the movement, it actually takes a lot of the movement out. And it's not perfect because it's quite a wide shot. It's it's like a 24mm equivalent angle, and it's not quite the same quality as what you'd get from your main camera. Yeah. But essentially, it is a really good option if you're not far away from your couple and you're wanting to get that dual shot.
And especially when these moments are lasting a couple of seconds as well, it's not going to be one of the main focuses on the video. So for a clip for 2-3 seconds, if something, as you say, might be a bit wider than your standard shot, I don't think people are really going to, especially couples, aren't really going to notice the difference between the wide angle and your what do you shoot on? That's a 24. What do you usually shoot on for video?
Well, I'll be honest, I've most of the time, the last year or so, I've used the Tamron 35 to 150. Yeah. So obviously at 35, I'm getting, that's quite a standard shot that most people would use. Most people would shoot at 35, but it gives me that range of being able to get some really tight shots. So that's actually another, I mean, it's a totally different topic in itself, but that lens is insane for doing hybrid coverage, because it just gives you so many options, and you know, from a quality perspective and like how wide the aperture is, because it's f2 when it's at 35 to 50-ish. So it's not, you know, it's almost like using a prime anyway. But also another thing that I might do is use the photos in the video. So it might sound like, well, that's not a proper wedding video, right? But if you're making a highlight video, what people want to see is a moment or an emotion. So if you can show them that moment or emotion in the video, I know that now we're kind of delving between cinematic film and kind of slideshow, but if you really are in a pinch, I've put photos in hybrid films before, you know, like if it's just been one of those days where there just wasn't like there was loads of action, but I know I got some really banger photo shots of like certain parts of the day, and I've mixed them in, right? And no one gives a shit.
No.
Now,
okay,
I'm not
that's
saying that, I'm not saying that from like a purist perspective that that's the way to go. And I'm not recommending that as a strategy. But what I'm saying is that as long as you're clear, like you've said already, about the product that you're offering, you can actually, you know, you're getting paid for a product, and as long as you're not making it, as long as you're not suggesting that they're going to get this, you know, crazy wedding film that would have taken a team of 3 people, they're actually, you know, how you get there is, as long as it's in line with what you would normally provide, you can be fluid within that. And even like burst modes now on photos, most cameras are shooting 20 plus frames a second in burst mode, which is pretty much video anyway.
If you shoot 24 frames a second, you've created a video, a 1 second video. So
there you go.
That's true. You can do a little stop motion scene in a video.
And I've done that before too.
Have you? I've never thought about that. I have seen a few people putting photos in videos. I don't think it matched my style of video, but that is a good option.
Yeah, like I say, it's got to match your style, and I'm not saying that's something I do. I don't do that on every video, but with certain hybrid coverages and certain weddings where you were just like basically, you know, like the ones where if you were just shooting video, you'd be like, oh my God, I don't know how to make this into a video. Right? If you're doing hybrid with that, actually, you know, it makes it really raises it up by putting those photos in. Because if you imagine like photographers, what they're doing is potentially making a slideshow of their 100 best images from the wedding or whatever to music, you know, a 4-minute video with like the best images, and people love watching that. So what if you've got like this kind of like some video, and then every now and then there's a photo? And for example, what I'd probably do,
I can see the appeal of it.
What I'd probably do is, or what I have done, is the video's in colour, but then I smash this black and white photo in, and it's almost emphasising the moment. And then if you put like a little push in, or a little like bit of movement, you know, in the photo, just like a tiny bit. A bit like when people, because if you think about it, you've already said sometimes people, even videographers, are actually using stills in the video for the details.
Absolutely.
So it's like, it's not really any different. It's just that because there's people in it, you're expecting them to move.
I think that's the issue, isn't it? There's moving objects in there which aren't moving, which I can't. I'm trying to think for my style of movie. I can't imagine how it would fit in, but I've never tried it. Maybe I'll try it in the next one and I'll tell you how it goes.
It's definitely not a purist thing. Like I know that if there's like hardcore videographers, you know, filmmakers listening to this, they'll be
switching off right now, Jules.
Yeah, they will. But the point is, it's not me saying that's what you should do. It's me saying that if you kind of approach hybrid with a more open mind, as in like, I don't have to provide I'm not providing the couple with the same product as what I would if I was doing, you know,
and you know
just
what,
this or just that.
In a way, putting something like that in maybe a couple of your videos would be potentially a good way to go, because it's covering your back. Then people see them see them videos, see that you've got photos in your videos. So if any sticky situations do come up where you can only shoot photo or video, then you kind of covered your back a little bit, haven't you?
Yeah, and it's something you can always put in your contract, or you can put it in your your kind of portfolio text, you copy on your website or whatever. You can be like, this is how I do it. Now, again, it's a very minor number of, like, if I've done sort of best part of 100 hybrid shots weddings, it's probably I've probably done that with 2 or 3 of them. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But I'm just trying to give kind of a broad spectrum. So we've kind of talked about, that's like how you might approach those moments, like first looks and stuff like that. So they're the same moments. So let's go through the moments where you're going to have those problems and see if there's anything you might do slightly different. So we've talked about the first look. Then we're going on to the ceremony. I mean, for me, the ceremony is very much the same, but you're definitely going to set up that camera on the tripod. Yeah. So how kind of are you going about that?
So same way for me. So I'll set either two tripods up, different angles, or just one, which is pretty much just shooting straight at the couple, and that's literally just locked off. So I'll just frame that to make sure that wherever I go in that, I won't be walking into that frame, which in the ceremony is pretty easy because the majority of the time I'm at the front shooting towards the bride and groom. When they walk back down the aisle, I'll probably just pick the camera up on the tripod, take it to the back, press record again, let it film them walking down the aisle while I'm photographing. That's slightly trickier, I think, when it comes to like speeches and whatnot, but maybe we can come back onto that part when we get to speeches. But yeah, the ceremony side of it, to me, I find probably one of the easiest because it is literally just a locked off camera. The other option I have is when the bride's walking down the aisle to meet the groom, is it walking down the aisle or walking up the aisle?
I think it's down the aisle. Up the aisle.
I think up the aisle.
Do you know what? It's a weird one. That's a weird one, isn't it? Because there isn't a gradient.
There isn't. No, there isn't. When the bride is walking to the groom, if I've got a moment, if it's a good long walk down, I'll definitely be switching between photo and video on like my handheld as well. I'm just getting a couple of shots of that, so it's got a bit more motion in it. And the same again for like putting the ring on. So I'll never do it for the first kiss. I'll leave the first kiss to the static camera, so then I can get the photo of the first kiss. But like putting the ring on, they're always pausing for a moment and doing the vows and whatnot before they actually put the ring on. So whilst they're in that, I mean, like I'm showing video here, so people that are just listening on the podcast won't see this, but while they're holding the ring over the finger, I've got plenty of time to switch for a couple of 3-second shot of the ring on the finger before I switch back to photo and actually capture the moment of them putting the ring on the finger.
Absolutely. Because as well, they're going to do it both ways, aren't they? They're both going to do a ring thing. Yeah. So you can kind of, the way I usually do it is I think, right, the first bit, I'm going to get some photos. And then the second, like, as like, say that the bride's doing the first person, let's say, is doing the ring first. Mm-hmm. So like, I'll take some photos at the start of that. And then towards the end of it, I'll switch to video. Yeah. And then I'll keep the video rolling into when the other person starts putting the ring on, and then stop and then get a few photos. And that's how I usually do it. Yeah.
And I think that comes down to more just experiencing being a wedding photographer or videographer and just understanding what moments you have got time to switch between photo and video. Because, I mean, if I first started out, I'd be freaking out even thinking about switching to video to get a shot of the rings going in. But like when you realise that actually the vows take almost probably a minute each, don't they, while you're putting the ring on, before they actually physically put the ring on. You realise you've got that time. So it's I think it just comes down to experience as well.
Yeah, that's exactly it. As soon as you're comfortable with the order in which things happen in a wedding and the amount of time that things take, it's like you become familiar with the process, don't you? That's the hardest. Probably what you're outlining there is probably the hardest thing about doing hybrid shooting is that if you're absolutely brand new and you don't have any experience of weddings, you're not really knowing what the hell's going to happen next. But if you've done plenty of weddings, at that point you kind of like know what's coming and you know how long it's going to take. And there'll always be surprises that get thrown up, but it's usually going to happen like this. So I'm ready to do what, I'm ready to get a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So I do the same thing with the locked off camera and then obviously getting a few shots on my handheld photo camera in between getting photos, because again, something like the ceremony, you do not need photos of the whole thing.
No, you don't.
Once you've got two of them looking at each other when they've first got together, you've got the person coming down the aisle. You get some, you get like 3 or 4 shots of that, and then you get a couple of them looking at each other, and then not much happens until they start doing their vows. And actually, people talking to each other look shit on photos.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I think we all fall guilty of taking thousands of photos of the same moment, don't we? But I think part of shooting hybrid is you've got to teach yourself not to overshoot those moments in just one form, rather than shooting all of the moments in photography. You need to it's almost just like halving the amount of photos you take and doing the other half in video. So rather than shooting, say, 100 photos of them both stood still at the top of the eye, you shoot 50 photos and both stood still in the same position at the top of the eye, and then you've got a bit more time to shoot film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's basically you're thinking about, if you would normally be taking more photos, well, do you need all those photos? I mean, for instance, my hybrid package actually has half the number of photos delivered.
Does it really?
Yeah. Now, because I do another package where I do kind of full photo and video coverage, so I'll do exactly the same if I was doing full video, and that is with 2 people, 2 shooters. So. And that'll be like what I've done when you've come and worked with me. And normally I'd be shooting with Lindsay potentially or somebody else. But it's kind of, I have that. But then the hybrid, I say it's half the number of photos and it's a short highlight film.
Yeah.
And I might give them the ceremony and speeches as well. But I'm very clear about how it's not necessarily going to be a multicam thing. It might just be from one camera. And some people that's all they want. They don't need this like really fancy production with multicams and shit like that. So I think we can kind of sort of like look at, that's the ceremony. You're going to do that for the speeches. So let's just take the audio bit. If you're doing, are you recording audio when you're doing hybrid? Do you like trying to get the vows and stuff?
Yeah. So audio is a bit of a minefield, isn't it, when you first started? But I think when I first started out, it was harder than it is these days. I mean, I think you use the same as me now, the TX650s or 660s. I think you've got a few different types. But these days it's fairly simple. Like, it's just a little device that you click onto the groom's jacket and maybe the registrar or the vicar's jacket. So it's not too bad in that sense. It's quite easy, isn't it? But do you need to record audio in hybrid? A lot of people that I know that do shoot hybrid now have gone down the easy route, and I don't blame them, of just having music over the top. So it's something that, again, I think really you need to make that decision before you start offering hybrid of what you want to do, because I went down the route of offering audio in my videos. So to take them out now, I think people would feel like they've been a little bit in love with it. But yeah, it's something that I think you need to think about before you start offering video.
But it's like you say, it's just about being clear with the couple so they know what they're getting. And if all you want to do is deliver a music type edit, then as long as that's what they're expecting, then you don't even need to worry about the audio. But how are you, kind of just talk to me, like, do you find it more difficult if you were just shooting video, say, do you find it more difficult shooting photo and video and putting the mic on people?
No, I don't. To putting the mic on is literally just clicking for a couple of seconds. The hardest thing is remembering to do it. So if you for me, I shoot predominantly photography, So then when it comes to shooting photo and video, it's just, you need to have it in the back of your mind that these key moments are when you need to have their mic set up on the subjects. So for me, I only set them up twice. So it's ceremony and speeches, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's not really any other reason why I'd want to set up audio or a microphone to anyone apart from
I
that.
Think,
Unless
I think in other wedding markets, they might they might put mics on people for first looks, and they might put mics on people for different parts of the day to get like letter readings and things like that. But how many weddings do you get in the UK where they read letters to each other or something?
Yeah. It might have happened to me twice, I think.
Exactly.
But I mean, like, some people do it. Some people do it only. So yeah, you just need to be aware of. I mean, like, for me, I need to know when if there's any readers during the ceremony. So yeah, there's just you need to. Well, I have a form that I send out, and it's a different form to my photography form. And on the hybrid form, it will have a more extensive list of what's going on. So during your ceremony, is there any speakers? Or readers? Who are they? And you need to identify them to me on the day, so I can go and connect these mics up to them and whatnot. But it's just something you just need to be on your game a little bit with in the audio, because if you said you'll provide it, then they're going to want it, aren't they? And like, not necessarily all, especially if you're only going to be offering a highlights trailer, they're not going to want the full audio of the day, but they're definitely going to want the most meaningful words and etc. aren't they? They're not going to want nothing if you've promised them something.
Yeah.
So it's something we've just got to keep your eye on. Really.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, you see, because I do more video than I do photo, it's absolutely no different. Like, if you're already a videographer, and I get that most people that are going to go in the hybrid route are probably going from photo into video rather than video into photo, but it's like, for me with video, I don't approach it any different when I'm doing hybrid. Like, I know, like you've said about, I gather that information about who's going to be reading in the ceremony, who's giving speeches, and then I'm just going to get those mics out. So basically, while I'm at the end of bride prep, I'm getting the mics out, I'm getting them ready, and I'm setting them recording. Yeah. So literally, I don't even have to do anything when I walk into the ceremony. Yeah. I am walking in and clipping them onto the person that's speaking. Yeah. It takes about 10 seconds. Now, there are some times where you really are pushed and rushed for time, but it's still absolutely fine. Do you know what I mean? I still managed to do it. So it's about planning. That's all it is.
It definitely is. It is the planning side of it. Yeah.
So let's take, you've explained about like an exit of the ceremony and things like that. Like, another thing's that's pretty difficult is confetti. Confetti
shot, yeah, that is a tricky one. So I've done this well, it's quite similar to, as I mentioned before, there's two ways I usually do this. It's either, again, a static camera, which for me, it works, but it's not usually the style I'll go for, because with the confetti, usually it's a confetti tunnel, and I'll want to be walking back through the tunnel with the couple. If it's a static camera, I'm going to be in that static camera shot for the majority of walking back. So what I usually do is I usually have the tripod set up quite high on an angle and like shooting from above, but focusing on like a certain point in the tunnel, if you're following me. Just so I know that I will get about 5 seconds at least of the bride and groom walking through the tunnel. I mean, like, you could even be quite clever and maybe use 1 or 2 people as a focus point, and know that them 2 people are where you want the bride and groom to stop in that confetti tunnel and give each other a kiss or something. So then you've got that on video as well, the extra time in your video. And then you carry on walking, that's the rest of your photos, if that all makes sense to you. But the other option is shoot the whole confetti tunnel in video and do still frames from it to offer to the clients. But again, for me, that's just being clear with my couples. And like a lot of my clients, they're very similar. And what I know they want isn't photographs printed of confetti shots, etc.
Yeah.
They don't do that. So for me, knowing that the quality of the photo from the still frame of the video, well, that was a mouthful, isn't going to be as high as your original photograph, I don't think they're going to be that bothered, because they don't really print out, as I said, the confetti shots. And if they did print it out, it would probably be in an album that they order with me, and the photographs from the still frames are going to be enough quality to put in the album.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be blowing up a massive 3-bar like A3 printout of
on a wall. Yeah,
on the wall of the confetti show. It's not really a problem. It's never been a problem.
Especially with all the kind of software stuff now for upscaling images. I'd know that you can, as long as you get your shutter speed right when you're shooting video, the stills that you can pull off a 4K, or like now we're talking 6 and 8K. You know, cameras are coming out with 6 and 8K sensors.
There's no problem with them, especially for like albums and whatnot. You're not really gonna have a problem. I mean, sometimes I use still frames in my Instagram posts. I know the quality of them are nothing compared, but no one knows the difference.
No, they don't, because that's the proof in the pudding, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we've kind of talked about probably the most difficult parts. What are you doing when you get into like group shots, portraits? How are you approaching that? Because I tend to kind of, some people don't shoot video of the group shots, for instance. I actually will, if I'm solely by myself, I'll usually set up a tripod next to me. And the reason is because I like to get some video shots of those people together, like, you know, couple with parents and stuff, in case I want some shots for the video of the couples with the parents, but and that way I can just focus on doing the photos. But how do you go about that?
So I don't film group shots.
Not many people do.
So that's an easy one for me. I don't film group shots, but for the portrait wise of the couples, I usually take them out for, when I'm doing photography, I usually take them out for 10-15 minutes max throughout the day, and just capture some pretty natural shots of them just walking along. Maybe do some quite relaxed poses and stuff, just where they're both facing each other and just having a quick catch up or whatnot. But when it comes to hybrid, I always double the amount of time that I say it's going to take on portraits. So what I usually do is film the in-between moments. So if they're walking from one location to the next, say if they want some shots up on the hills by the venue or something like that, while we're walking to the hills, to me, that's the moment where I'm going to be catching the majority of the video. I can get a couple of photographs of them walking up the hill and whatnot, easy peasy, but that's a moving moment where actually it would probably look better on video than it would just the photographs. I mean, you don't need 100 photographs in walking up the hill. So yeah, I usually say it takes double the time portrait side of it. Just so I can get some more detailed shots as well of them, like maybe holding hands, close bit of holding hands and whatnot as they're walking along, or their dress flowing as she's walking, or, you know, them both laughing or something, or getting close to each other, maybe a little kiss or something like that. We might just have to duplicate the shot a little bit, but really it's fairly simple stuff. I mean, the majority of my video comes down to a few moments, and it's usually a couple of seconds of bridal prayer, a little few clips of the ceremony, bit of the first dance, tiny bit of the speeches, and the bulk of it is the portraits. So I probably go heavier on the video side of it when it comes to portraits than I do with the photographs. Mainly because once they're in a position and I've got that photograph, I'll start focusing on the video side of it. And with the video side of it, I'll probably do 2 to 3 different shots of like distance. Is there a dog bark? Is that your dog barking?
It's my dog. Can you hear it?
Yeah,
sorry to people listening, but
that bloody dog away.
Outside.
Yeah, so video wise, I'll do different distance shots, etc. So I might do a wide, a medium, and a closer. So that to me takes a little bit more time than doing the photo side of it. But yeah, it's pretty simple stuff, really. When it comes to the portraits, especially, that's the easiest part of the day.
So it's like you've got more time then, because you are usually you've given yourself time to do that. You've been straight with a couple about like it's going to take a little bit more time because we're doing video as well. So I might have to get you to kind of hold something what you're doing for a little bit longer, because I'm going to take a couple of photos and I'm going to get a little bit of video. I mean, that's pretty much what I'm saying throughout the day. Like I even do that, you know, in groom prep. Like I'll say to the, I prefer to get actual groom prep, when they're actually having a laugh and they're doing, they're interacting with each other and they're actually getting dressed. I prefer that. But if you don't get that for whatever reason,
rather than them getting undressed, you want to shoot that bit.
Ah, nice one, mate. Oh. But like, what I mean is like, if they're kind of like, when you don't get the time and you're rushing, or maybe you don't see them till they get to the venue or something and they've got ready somewhere else, and then you do some bullshit like, just mess with his tie a little bit, if you're doing that, I just literally I proper just take the piss and get some photos and then say, right, hold it, because I'm just switching to video, and then it's quite funny because they can't help but laugh because it's ridiculous. So actually, then on the video, it makes more sense because it actually looks like they're naturally taking a piss out of each other. Yeah. Cool. So I pretty much do things exactly the same way. So the last bit, obviously, we won't go into speeches too much because I think speeches are a bit weird for photos. I think it's great to get people's reactions, people smiling, laughing. The best man says something, the bride's like head in her hands and groom's like, pissed off with him, whatever. I think it's great to get those reaction type shots, but essentially people just talking doesn't look very good on photo. Yeah. So you might want to get more video of the speeches than you do photos. And essentially that's kind of, I would set up a static camera to make sure I get that. And I would also switch between photo and video to get some extra clips. Yeah.
So I for me, the speeches is probably the trickiest part about shooting hybrid. And it took me a while to figure out how best to do it. So I used to get static cameras, but the problem was that I want to kind of shoot quite close to the top table when we're doing the speeches. And when I was doing that, it made me get in front of the video. So I was literally, there was shots of me walking in the video, and it's just not what I wanted. So it's really only one way I shoot that, and I was with a static camera again, but I'll have that really close up to the top table, wide angle, on an angle, maybe at the edge of the top table, shooting towards the speaker, and hopefully getting like the reaction of like the bride and groom, or the bride if it's the groom speaker, which then gives me a bit more space to stand behind the camera photographing. And the only problem is with that is that in a lot of the pictures, you'll be able to see the camera, but the good thing about that is you can edit the photograph a lot easier than you can a video. So I can just edit them cameras out, which isn't really a problem. I mean, I'll have them almost table high anyway looking up. So it's a pretty easy edit. But yeah, I find that probably the trickiest one. If you're not going to do that, just be prepared that you will end up walking across the frame in your video to get like a moment of one of the bridesmaids crying, or like the father of the bride laughing or whatnot. You just need to be aware of where you're setting your cameras up so you don't walk into shot too much and potentially ruin that shot, really.
Yeah. It's good. I think that's a great way to do it if that's your style of photo. So I know you're shooting primes and you're going to want to get those more up close reactionary shots. Yeah. So like I think this is probably because I don't come from photo, I come from video into photo. And I just prefer to shoot longer, and that's why I've got that 35 to 150, because at 150, I can be miles away and get really close-up shots of reactions. So because I've got my video on a tripod near the back and zoomed in, and then I can basically stand next to it, or I can move around the room, getting kind of like snipe type shots from a distance, which isn't everyone's cup of tea, and it isn't everyone's style. Maybe I should get rid of my primes because you're selling this to me, Julius. I'll tell you now, like I've tried primes, I've tried lots of different types of lenses, and everybody, all the purists go on about primes, but I'm hearing more and more people talk about zooms now, and I've been shooting with zooms for the last 4 or 5 years. Now, I've still got primes. I pull them out. I'll use them in a portrait session. I'll use them on the dance floor, but I don't use them all day because certainly for like ceremony, speeches, prep, I just find that the zoom does like a lot more, it gives a lot more versatility. I can get things a lot quicker. Obviously with hybrid, if you're trying to get both photo and video, that speed is a real plus.
Yeah, I mean, another subject that we can discuss another time is like the equipment that we use, but that's an interesting one, that, because I shoot prime for both photo and if I had just a videography job, I'd use the exact same lenses, the 35 and 85, to shoot the video. Thinking about it, shooting hybrids, you could potentially benefit from telephoto lenses. In my eyes, yeah, I can see that would make things a lot easier.
Yeah, and I feel like it does, and that's why I went. That lens wasn't cheap, and it's really heavy, so it's an investment financially. Is that lens? This is the Tamron 35 to 150, but it's also kind of, you have to be committed to carrying this massive lens around all day, and
so do you use that the entire day, that lens?
The entire day now. Whether I'm doing photo, video, or hybrid, I will have that on one of my cameras. And then the other camera, I'll either have a 16 to 35, because I particularly like really wide shots, particularly on the dance floor, or for some quite kind of different, unique type shots, like documentary type shots.
Yeah.
Or I've got a 24 prime, or I'll put maybe the 85 on the other camera for some portrait stuff, because I want like a really shallow depth of field. That's pretty much what I'll do.
Yeah.
So dance floor, last thing. It's been quite long on this.
We're hitting an hour. It's because Jules messed up the first one and didn't press record.
So dance floor, what's your take on that? Because you said you think speeches is the hardest part of the day. I would say dance floor is the hardest part of the day for me, because I think to get really good dance floor video when you're not focusing on it is probably the hardest thing to do. Yeah.
So for me, I just simplified the dance floor, because it was a tricky one to do, especially the first dance. So,
yeah, the first dance is what I'm thinking, because the rest of the night you can take your time, can't you?
Yeah, you can. So really, in my videos, I don't have huge amounts of shots of the first dance. So there was pretty much the tell story sign of what you get when I shoot the wedding movie. The first dance, I focus purely on photography, and then once I've got them moments that I think I've captured, I'll quickly flip and get a 10-second shot of them doing a bit of dancing. And then the majority of the evening dancing, I'll focus quite heavily on, well, actually, I'll probably 50-50 that with photo and video. Because the first dance shot, in my videos anyway, I don't need more than 10 seconds of them dancing. And we usually dance for 2-3 minutes, don't we?
Yeah.
So 10 seconds of video is simple for me. Once I've got that shot, easy peasy. The next thing I do is just get some really close-up dance shots of people going mad on the dance floor, which kind of is obviously the end of the. It doesn't have to be the end of your video. It depends how you edit it, but a lot of the time it's a good ending to a video, isn't it? There's people dancing on the dance floor, etc. So yeah, I'll just focus on some moments of that. But yeah, it's pretty simple when it comes to that. I don't really overthink that side, and I've very much simplified it, because otherwise it can be quite difficult, especially with the cameras that I shoot with. The focusing system isn't the best system, so if I set it up on a tripod and then they're moving about all over the spot, my focus will lose them.
It's not going to track,
It's not. It will track for a certain amount, but if they do something wild, like it's not even wild, but if he twirls around or something like that, my camera's probably not going to know which one to focus on when it comes to video. So I'll lose it. So I'm not even going to risk trying to offer people. I mean, we're going to talk about cameras and different cameras and whatnot in another episode, but I'm not even going to try and sell people an idea of giving them a first dance in full, because that would give me too much pressure to do that. So I'd have to very much focus just on the video side of it, and would be missing out on the photos. So for me, yeah, I just simplified it. And
it's good. It's good to hear you say that, because I think that's made me maybe rethink a little bit about my approach when I'm doing hybrid, because I've come mainly from video, I've got this mindset of trying to record like those types of moments, and not every videographer will give the couple the full first dance, but I do. So I think I try to record it in full, because I feel like, well, it's one of them things that happens once, and they might hate it and never want to watch it again, but they
I mean,
might.
I think there was only one occasion, and you were with me at a wedding venue where it was a really good first dance. Jen and Elliot.
Oh
If
yes,
you can remember. So
yep.
they were. Well, she used to be a dancer, didn't she? So like she choreographed. There we go. The whole
That's
is
it.
that right? The whole thing.
That's it.
Which was amazing. So yeah, I can kind of see why maybe then someone would want the full recording of the first dance. However, 90% of the time, the first dance is something that a lot of people will probably watch back if it's a full video of the first dance and think, oh my god, like shit,
what were I doing?
Do you know what I mean? Why am I doing that? So from my view, like I don't think if it was me getting married, I'm not bothered about seeing me trying to dance for 3 minutes straight. I wouldn't be interested in seeing that. And I think a lot of people are the same. I don't think it's.
I think a lot of people, but I think maybe it's because I do more video than anything else.
Yeah.
But like, I get a lot of people actually, doing a proper dance.
Right.
And
okay.
I sometimes get like special dances as well, where
Right.
bridesmaids or like the bride might be a dancer and might be part of a dance school or something. And I've done 3 weddings now from the same dance school, and they all do this massive fancy dance.
Oh, really?
And I know that they want that recording in full.
Yeah. Well, there you go. It comes down to the client that you've got then, doesn't it, and who you're attracting. So yeah, I suppose that one's just one that you're just gonna have to play by ear.
But it's
I suppose it also. Go on.
Sorry, mate.
No, go on.
I was just going to say you can do it different ways. There's not one way to do it. And actually, when I'm in a pinch with something like the first dance, I've always got a video wide that's, quite high up looking at the, so I can basically deliver, even if it's just in that one video of the wide, and then maybe a couple of clips where I've got some closer up bits of the first dance.
Yeah.
A little bit of really tight on the hands, or feet or faces, and then maybe a couple of clips of like a mid shot. But once you've got that and you cut that into your static wide on a tripod, you've nailed it.
Yeah. I mean, like there's other options as well for like not the first dance, but the dancing, evening dancing and whatnot. That I've done a few times. It's a little bit risky, so make sure you've got your insurance for it. But I've got a GoPro and I've got a little handle for it, and I give it to the guests and walk around and let them dance and film themselves dancing, because it actually does make quite a good scene. And what they don't realise is they're having a great time, but they're doing your job for you. Like they're capturing some really cool moments. So if you're doing video, if you're doing hybrid, you could let them do the majority of the dance floor video for you while you're focusing on the photo. So a little bit of a cheeky, tricky one, but cheeky trick that one. But
it's a good one, that, mate. Yeah,
it's pretty cool. It works. I mean, like sometimes it works, other times it doesn't work. Sometimes you just get drunk people pulling weird faces at the camera, but other times it works quite well. So it might be worth a shot if you're struggling to.
I've never done that. I have given them, like if they've been getting in a car or something, for like traveling between prep and the thing, and I've thought I'm not going to be there, and I'm going to miss a bit, and there might be something I want. So I have actually given like to the most sensible groomsmen, here's the GoPro type camera. Will you just get me a few clips? But again, you're right, and it's hit and miss whether that works. But it's a good one, that about the dance floor. So right, mate, that's been great. So just to like kind of wrap it up, what it's about, isn't it? It's about there's a few points. One is about understanding weddings. So it's about having that knowledge of the order of things that typically happen on a wedding day. And that will be different depending on where you are. So what happens in the US or an Asian wedding might not be the same as what happens in the UK. And I think that that's one of the things that's, without going into a different topic, that's one of the things that's quite difficult about education. Because when you're listening to a podcast that's from like America, but you work in the UK, like a UK wedding is clearly not the same as most US weddings. And I've had like I've worked with US couples, I'm sure you have, and their weddings do seem to be slightly different to how we're used to it. So it's kind of knowing how that wedding's going to, wherever you're working, whoever you're working with, whatever the couple like, it's about understanding what's going to happen, the timings for things. And it's about setting expectations. And if you do those three things and you're really like confident and clear about using your equipment, as in like, you know, I've got this, I didn't just buy this camera yesterday and I haven't got a freaking clue how it works. But if you know how to set it up and you've got it set up how you want it, and you know how to quickly switch between photo and video, whether you're switching on a dial or you've got like a memory button, or whether it's set up so that, for instance, me, I can literally press the shutter, it takes a photo, and then I press the record button and I'm straight into video. Like I don't change any settings at all. So I'm literally using the same settings. And when I'm doing hybrid, I'm thinking my shutter speed stays around this point. My aperture is basically going to compensate for if it gets too bright. But I'm also going to think about, you know, what do I want that shallow depth of field? And then I'm just going to use my ISO if it gets too dark, but I'm not going to be going crazy all over the place with my settings, because I want to be able to get the same exposure whether I'm shooting photo or video. Yeah.
I think especially when you might disagree with me on this, but I think when you're first starting out shooting hybrid, I wouldn't worry too much on the technical side. I'd focus more on just trying to figure out the story. Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, the technical stuff will come later on, won't it? It's just figuring out how to capture that story and then moments really. And then once you've got that, it'll come naturally. Then you just need to focus a little bit more on the settings to achieve the style that you're in.
Absolutely, mate. That's been really good. Thanks for all your input on that, because it's been good to kind of bounce stuff off each other.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end of the episode and we're going to talk about the song of the week, because I said that's what we do. So
what's the song of the week this week, Jules?
I'm just bringing it in now. I don't know if you can hear it. It's quite quiet. So a little precursor. I don't know what you use at the moment, but I use musicbed for all my licensed music. They're not sponsoring the podcast at the moment, but there's numerous music sites I've used over the years, and I just think the musicbed, the music tends to be just a bit better quality. Well, not a bit better, a lot better quality. And I find that the sort of music that I want to use is on there, whereas some of the other platforms, I'm limited by, there's only a couple of artists that I'll ever use.
Yeah, so no, I'm the same actually. Musicbed is the go-to one for me.
Yeah, so this is taken from their site, and today's song is Epilogue by Chapters. So it's like a really nice, perfect contrast between intrigue and intense. It's almost like I'm doing like a food review here. I'm like kind of, you know,
what do we do in between? Do we just stare at each other in the eyes whilst?
I'm not suggesting that we listen to the full song, mate. We will play the full song out.
How long is the full song?
It's about 4 minutes, I think. But basically, it's kind of got softness and elegance as this one, like a really great build-up and then a nice crescendo near the end. So if you're wanting something where you're like really building up this kind of like dramatic feel, but it's not too like da-da-da, it's more, you know, it's kind of quite soft, and it kind of builds up really slowly. Works really well for that kind of ethereal type feel, but where at the end there's some pretty good dancing. Okay. So I just thought this might be helpful for people who are making wedding films and are struggling to find music, that if every week we've got a song that I've used or you've used, and it might be worth people having a look and put it on the list.
There you go.
So that's it for this episode. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope that you join us for the next one.
Over now.